Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Egan. I'm seeking re-election to the Board of Finance. I would like to begin by saying that I want to express my appreciation to the Town Committee for renominating me for a second term on the Board of Finance. I look forward very much to serving another 4 years, and I greatly appreciate your vote of confidence. So thank you very much. One of the problems that any speaker has in following Jim O'Keefe is he doesn't leave very much on the plate for you to talk about when he talks about town finances. But nonetheless, some of the things he said, I think, really bear repeating. And I'm going to repeat some of them. I think most of the people here in Guilford, throughout the state, and indeed throughout the country, are coming to realize or recognize what I call, the economic rule of gravity. You can only, increase your spending as long as you have the revenues to counterbalance that spending. I think that, throughout the country, and certainly, here in Guilford, we're coming to that realization for the reasons that Jim has alluded to earlier. I'm going to repeat some of the things that he said, and I want to elaborate on one of them in particular, and it's a point that Keith Bishop touched on in his talk. I would say that the single issue that most defines Democrats and Republicans is the issue of spending. Now, getting back for a moment to the matter of the fund balance, I don't know if Jim touched on this as sufficiently as he did, but for the past 4 or 5 years, the Republican members of the Board of Finance have raised hell over the question of the fund balance. Now, you've heard descriptions of what the fund balance is. Essentially, it's a savings account. And I want to allude now to a point that Keith made, that all of us are aware that in the next few years, maybe not this year, but within the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to have to go into the capital fund markets to sell bonds to raise money for school construction. We don't know how much that's going to be, but it's going to be tens of millions of dollars. We all know that. And that is the significance of the fund balance. Because if the fund balance isn't kosher, so to speak, if your fund balance is not at a certain level, you're going to pay more to borrow money. Now, I think belatedly, the Democrats have come to a realization that we've got a problem. I think they have recognized the fact that this has to be addressed, that we have to take money from other parts of the budget to put it into the fund balance so that we won't pay a very significant penalty somewhere down the road. Now, of course, the question is, where is that money going to come from to address the imbalance in the fund balance? Well, it's going to come from everybody sitting in this room, from the taxpayers of Guilford. That's where that money is going to come from. And I want to repeat, for years, and if you go back and if you're so inclined to look at the tapes of the Board of Finance meetings, Jim O'Keefe raised that issue every year about the fund balance and that eventually this was going to come back to bite us, and it has. The other point I want to talk about, again, Jim alluded to this, mentioned it, and that is the question of the budget that we, passed last spring. I'm sure all of you recall, the budget negotiations and the fact that the first budget that came before the Board of Finance called for a tax increase of 7%. Jim rightly pointed out that every Democrat on the Board of Finance voted to send that out to the voters. The 3 Republicans on the Board of Finance, myself, Jim O'Keefe, and Kimberly Brockett, almost choked on that budget. We voted against it unanimously. The budget went to the voters, and what happened? It was sent back. It was defeated decisively. The second budget went out to the voters, and the important point to bear in mind about that the second budget proposal that went to referendum is that every single recommendation that we, the Republicans and the Board of Finance, made was incorporated and adopted by the Democrats, and that's the budget that was presented in the second referendum, and that is the budget that was passed by a substantial margin. So that's where we are. I want to just mention one other thing about that budget. the difference between the first budget and the second budget was a difference in taxes of $1.1 million. Okay? $1.1 million. If the Democrats on the Board of Finance had their way, the tax bill for the taxpayers of the town of Guilford will be $1.1 million higher than it currently is. I have been involved now in civic life in Guilford for about 10 or 12 years, and I can't recall a time when there has been a clearer choice between the respective parties, what they stand for, between the respective candidates and what they stand for, than is the situation now. There's a very, very clear distinction. If you want to continue the policies of the past and look at, and I think we're going to look at double-digit tax increases in the future if we don't change our ways. If you want that, then vote for the opposition. But if you want stable, responsible government, please return Republican majorities to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and the Board of Education. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.